Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss anti-ulcer agents. Myself, Dinesh Dangar. Here we will discuss peptic ulcer. First of all, what is peptic ulcer? How exactly it is created? What are the basic reasons behind it? That is their etiology. Next is the drugs which comes under the anti-ulcer category. So, starting with peptic ulcer. First of all, what is peptic ulcer? A peptic ulcer is a disease, or we can call it as a PUD, is an ulcer. Here we will consider ulcer which are greater than 0.5 centimeter in size, as well as there might be a mucosal erosions, and those mucosal erosions may be bleeding or non-bleeding. Okay, so here the diameter will be 0.5 centimeter of an area of the gastrointestinal tract that is exposed to the acid and pepsin secretion. Here, ulcer could be in a oral cavity, esophagus, stomach, or duodenum. According to location, we can define it into gastritis, duodenitis, and esophagitis. If it is present in esophagus, we will call it as a esophagitis. If it is present in stomach, we will call it as a gastritis. And if it remains into the duodenum, then we can call it as a duodenitis. Here, it can include any part of gastrointestinal tract, which generally comes into the contact with gastric acid as well as pepsin. Here, while coming to the etiology, it includes many basic reasons behind it. Here, gastritis is the precursor to PUD, that is peptic ulcer disease, and it is clinically difficult to differentiate these two in stomach, that is duodenum and esophagus. Duodenum, we used to call it as a duodenal ulcer or duodenitis, and in case of esophagus, we call it as a esophagitis. For further differentiation, endoscopy can be performed, and on the basis of endoscopic result only we can differentiate these three, that is duodenitis, esophagitis, and in gastric ulcer generally acid secretion will be normal or low. In cases of duodenitis, acid secretion will be high in certain half of the patients, generally normals in the rest. Generally, notwithstanding whether production of acid is normal or high, even it does contribute to the ulceration as an aggressive factor, which reduction of which is the main approach for the ulcer treatment. While coming to the imbalance, what is or because of imbalance there will be a formation of ulceration, and this imbalance primarily between aggressive factors and defensive factors can be seen. What could be the aggressive factors? Like acid, that is gastric acid, next is pepsin, Helicobacter pylori, NSAIDs, alcohol, and excessive bile secretion. Whereas defensive factor could be mucus, that is secreted in the stomach as well as small intestine, bicarbonates, and the prostaglandins. Generally, etiology of ulcer is not known, and it results probably due to the imbalances between these aggressive and the defensive factors. A variety of psychosomatic, humoral, and vascular derangements have been implicated, and the importance of Helicobacter pylori infection as a contributor to ulcer formation and recurrence has been recognized. In case of etiology, what may contribute imbalance? It could be because of Helicobacter pylori, NSAIDs, that is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, ethanol, tobacco, severe physiological stress like burns, central nervous system trauma, surgery, and certain severe medical illnesses, as well as steroids. Drugs of ulcer treatment. Prior going to the ulcer treatment, first we need to understand that how exactly gastric acid secretion will be regulated. Here, there will be a three binding domain for specific histamine, acetylcholine, as well as for gastrin, which initiates the sequence, and their effects can be seen on H plus K plus ATPase, which is proton pump, and it secretes proton ions, that is H plus ions, in the apical caniculi of the parietal cells. So what could be the activator here? That is histamine, acetylcholine, and gastrin, and they have their own receptors located on the basolateral membranes of these cells. Out of these three specific physiological secretagogues, that is histamine, it acts on or through H2 receptors, which plays the dominant role here because the other two, that is gastrin and acetylcholine, act partially directly and partially indirectly by releasing histamine from the paracrine enterochromaffin cells, and they are called as the histaminocytes, right? They are histaminocytes, and they will be located on the oxidic glands. While coming to H2 receptor, they activate H plus K plus ATPase, that is proton pump, by generating cyclic AMP, that is CAMP, muscarinic and gastrin, that is cholecystokinin, that is CCK2 receptors, which appears to function through the phospholipase C, that is IP3-DEG pathway, and it could mobilize the intracellular calcium. Here, cyclic AMP mediated proton pump activation also involves calcium. The, the secretomotor responses to gastrin and cholinergic agonist is expressed fully only in the presence of cyclic AMP, that is generated by H2 receptor activation. As such, histamine participates in the acid response to the gastrin and acetylcholine at more than one levels, and we can see it in diagram. While coming to the H2 antagonist, it suppresses not only histamine but also, that is acetylcholine, pentagastrin, and in fact any gastric acid that is secretory stimulus. Here, gastrin is secreted from the antrum in response to rise in enteral pH. So here pH is also a leading factor. pH, other than pH, it will be food constituents and vagal mediated reflexes. The dominant muscarinic receptor that is mediating vagal responses is of the basically of M1 subtype, that is M1 receptors, and its location on the ganglion cells of the intramural plexus, and it has been confirmed. The parietal cell muscarinic receptors is of the histaminocytes that has not been defined. Here, vagus nerve that releases acetylcholine is close proximity to the histaminocytes, and gastrin that secretes cells but apparently at a distance from the parietal cells. As such, vagal effects are exerted largely indirectly through histamine and the gastrin. Prostaglandins, they have been ascribed as cytoprotectives, and their role in the gastric mucosa by augmenting mucus and bicarbonate secretion as well as other actions. While coming to the PGE2, it is produced by the gastric mucosa and it inhibits acid secretion by opposing cyclic AMP generation, that is in parietal cells and in gastrin release from the enteral cells. So here, what will be the target sites? That is histamine receptor, acetylcholine receptor, that is muscarinic M1 receptors, as well as gastrin receptor. And our major approach will be antihistaminics, anticholinergics, and antigastrin. Overall effect or net effect can be observed on proton pump. So fourth category will be proton pump inhibitors itself. Okay, while coming to the classification for anti-ulcer agents, the first category, that is acid neutralizing agents. They are antacids. It could be divided into two. First, that is systemic, and second, that is non-systemic. Systemic involves sodium bicarbonates and the sodium citrate, whereas not systematic involves magnesium hydroxide, magnesium trisilicate, aluminum hydroxide gel, and megaldrate. Second category, that is reduction in gastric acid secretion. For that, H2 antihistaminics are used. They are cimetidine, ranitidine, famotidine, nizatidine, and roxatidine. Second into it, that is proton pump inhibitors. They are omeprazole, lansoprazole, pantoprazole, rabeprazole, and esomeprazole. Third category into it, that is anticholinergics like pyrazapine, propantheline, and oxyphenonium. Fourth into it, that is prostaglandin analogs like misoprostol and enprostil. Third category, that is ulcer protectives. Here in this case, ulcer is already formed, and now these agents will form a layer into it, that is sucralfate, colloidal bismuth subcitrate, and PG-enalog. Fourth category, that is anti-helicobacter pylori drugs, that is amoxicillin, clarithromycin, metronidazole, tinidazole, and tetracycline. First category into it, that is antacids. See, these are all the basic substances which generally neutralizes the gastric acid and raises pH of gastric content. Here, in the cases of antacids, there might be a rebound occurrence can be seen because antacids won't interfere with the secreting gastric acid. It generally neutralizes already present or accumulated gastric acid inside stomach. Here, peptic activity is indirectly reduced if the pH rises above 4 because pepsin is secreted as a complex with an inhibitory terminal moiety that dissociates below pH 5, and optimum peptic activity is exerted between pH, that is 2 to 4, and antacids do not decrease acid production, it just neutralizes the content. Here, while coming to the potency, potency of an antacid is generally expressed in terms of ANC, that is acid neutralizing capacity. How we can define that acid neutralizing capacity? It is defined as number of milliequivalent of one normal HCl that are brought to pH 3.5 in 15 minutes or 60 minutes in some test by a unit dose of the antacid preparations. So here the fixed amount of one normal HCl will be considered, and on that basis the potency of drug will be checked. This takes into consideration the rate at which it dissolves and reacts with HCl. Systemic antacids. Example, that is sodium bicarbonate. It is systemic because they are highly water soluble and it acts intensely. But the duration of action is very short because they are given through systemic routes. It is a potent neutralizer because 1 gram for 1 gram it can neutralize 12 milliequivalent HCl, and pH may rise above 7 within short duration of time. However, there are certain demerits because that absorbed systemically and large doses may produce alkalosis. It even produces carbon dioxide in stomach, and that carbon dioxide may lead to the distension, discomfort, bleaching, and there might be a risk of ulcer perforation. There will be a acid rebound, but is usually short lasting. It increases sodium load and it may worsen edema and congestive heart failure. Use of sodium bicarbonate is restricted to cosal treatment of heartburn, and it provides quick systematic quick symptomatic relief. Other uses are to alkalize urine and to treat acidosis. Now we will discuss non-systemic antacids. These are the insoluble and poorly absorbed basic compounds which reacts in stomach to form the corresponding chloride salt. The chloride salt again reacts with the intestinal bicarbonate to form bicarbonate, that is HCO3 ion, and is not spared for absorption. So no acid base distribution occur here in cases of non-systemic antacids. However, certain or small amounts that are absorbed have the same alkalizing effects as NaHCO3, that is sodium bicarbonate. Magnesium hydroxide has low water solubility. Here, the major problem with non-systemic antibiotics, non-systemic antacids, are that it will be generally present or it will be prepared in forms of salts only, right? And its aqueous suspension, that is milk of magnesia, has low concentration of hydroxyl ions and thus low alkalinity can be observed. However, it reacts with the hydrochloric acid promptly and is an efficacious antacid, that is 1 gram may dilute, that is 3 milliequivalent mole of HCl, and rebound acidity is mild and brief. Here, duration of action will be 30 minutes when taken in empty stomach and 2 hours when taken after a meal. There are certain side effects too. That is, with aluminum antacids, constipation is common, and as they relaxes the gastric smooth muscles, and it could delay the gastric emptying. It also hypophosphatemia and osteomalacia can be observed with aluminum hydroxide gel or aluminum antacids. H2 antagonist. These are the first class of highly effective drugs for acid peptic disease. 4 H2 antagonists, that is cimetidine, ranitidine, famotidine, and roxadidine, are available in India. Their interaction with H2 receptors has been found to be competitive in case of cimetidine, ranitidine, and roxadidine, but non-competitive in case of famotidine. Cimetidine was the first H2 blocker that was introduced clinically and is described as the prototype drug for H2 antagonist. Well, coming to the pharmacological actions of it, major effects can be observed on H2 receptor and it blocks H2 receptor. Here, cimetidine and all other H2 antagonists block histamine-induced gastric secretion, cardiac stimulation, uterine relaxation specific in rate, and bronchial relaxation. They are highly selective and have no effect on H1-mediated responses or on the action of other transmitters or autocoids. Second, that is gastric secretion. The only significant in vivo action of H2 blocker is marked here, that is inhibition of gastric secretion. That it includes all those phases of gastric secretion, that is basal, psychic, neurogenic, and gastric acid secretion are suppressed, and again it will be in dose dependent manner. The volume of pepsin content and intrinsic factor secretion are also reduced. Adverse effects. While coming to the H2 antagonist, the most common are GIT troubles like nausea, abdominal pain, constipation, and diarrhea. While going with the prolonged use, it may produce gynecomastia, that is breast formation in male, and the erectile dysfunctioning. Hypergastrenemia can be observed and which may predispose to rebound hypersecretion of gastric acid upon discontinuation of therapy and may promote the growth of gastrointestinal tumors, that is carcinoid tumors. Pharmacokinetic parameters. They are adequately, that is completely absorbed orally, and after that also there will be a viability of 60 to 80%, and that reduction in viability, it might be because of the first pass hepatic metabolism. Here, absorption is not interfered by the presence of food in stomach. So remember, it won't interfere the presence of food in stomach, and it crosses placenta and reaches to the milk, but penetration in brain is poor because of its hydrophilic nature. About two-thirds of a dose is excreted unchanged in urine and bile. Uses. They promote the healing of gastric and duodenal ulcers. Their efficacy will be 70 to 90% in case of duodenal ulcer, 50 to 75% in cases of gastric ulcer, that is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory derivatives or due to the NSAIDs. It is even also used in stress ulcers and the gastritis. It can be used in gastroesophageal reflux disease as well as in Zollinger-Ellison syndrome where excessive gastric acid secretion can be observed. Next drug, that is ranitidine. It is a non-imidazole and it will have a furandim H2 blocker. It has several desirable features that is compared to the cimetidine. And recently, all of you may be aware about the incidences that happened with the ranitidine. But after from the CDSCO, now these are all are cleared. About 5 times more potent than the cimetidine, though its pharmacokinetic profile in T-half of 2 to 3 hours is similar to the cimetidine. It shows longer duration of action with greater 24-hour acid suppression can be obtained with the ranitidine, and we can consider it as a highly potent drug as compared to the cimetidine. Here, no anti-adenogenic action, that is, does not increase prolactin secretion or spare estradiol from hepatic metabolism. No effect on the male sexual function or gynecomastia can be seen. So here we can consider this as an advantage of ranitidine. Here, lesser permeability into the brain as compared to the cimetidine and the lower propensity to cause CNS effects. In fact, little effect outside the gastrointestinal tract has been observed. Overall incidence of side effect is lower, that is, might see headache, diarrhea, constipation, dizziness have an incidences that is similar to the placebo. Next drug, that is proton pump inhibitors, and we can consider it as the most suitable and the first choice of drug, that is proton pump inhibitors. As name suggests, it inhibits proton pump, right? And we have already understood the regulation of gastric acid where we were discussing about the proton pump with those three binding domains for acetylcholine, gastrin and the histamine. So proton pump inhibitors are the most effective drugs in anti-ulcer therapy. Prototype drug or prodrug, that is omeprazole. Here the major disadvantage is prodrug requires activation in acid environment. It blocks the enzyme that is responsible for the secretion of HCl, and it binds with it irreversibly to the H plus K plus ATPase pump. It means, suppose any drug like omeprazole or lansoprazole, pantoprazole, saxiprazole may bind with the proton pump, but it binds irreversibly. So, after binding, it won't remove from the site. So, further there will be a complete cessation of that proton pump, and further there will be a formation of new proton pump. Here, prototype drug, that is omeprazole, and that is brand name, that is example, that is Prilosec. Other examples are lansoprazole, pantoprazole, rabeprazole, and esomeprazole. Proton pump inhibitors. Here, omeprazole, it is the prototype member. The only significant pharmacological action of omeprazole is dose-dependent suppression of gastric acid secretion. Again, it won't act on anticholinergic mechanism or it won't interfere with the H2 receptor blockage. It is a powerful inhibitor of gastric acid and it can totally abolish HCl secretion, both resting as well as that stimulated by food or any of other secretagogues. Without much effect on the pepsin, intrinsic factor, juice volume and gastric motility. Omeprazole is inactivated at neutral pH, but once there will be a pH that rearranges to lower than 5, then there will be a two charged cation forms, that is one may have a sulfonic acid and next one may have a sulfonamide configurations. that reacts covalently with the thiol group of the H plus K plus ATPase enzyme and inactivate it irreversibly, especially when two molecules of omeprazole react with one molecule of the enzyme. Moreover, it gets tightly bound to the enzyme. These features and the specific localization of H plus K plus ATPase to the apical membrane of the parietal cells confer high degree of selectivity of action towards the omeprazole. Here, acid secretion resumes only when there will be a formation of new proton pump, that is H plus K plus ATPase are synthesized. Next category, that is prostaglandin analogs. Example is misoprostol. Here, it inhibits the histamine-stimulated gastric acid secretion. It even stimulates the mucin and bicarbonate secretion. It increases the mucosal blood flow. Here, how it acts. Actually, it reinforces the mucous layer that is buffered by the bicarbonate secretion from the epithelial cells. While considering their uses, they are used in the prevention of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug-induced mucosal injury and rarely used because it needs frequent administration, that is, it may be given 4 times daily. Next category, that is ulcer protectives. An example is sucralfate. Here, its name suggests that they are ulcer protective. It means already ulcer is formed. Now, these agents will form a specific barrier or coat on to that already produced ulcer. Here, salts of sucrose complex the two sulfated aluminum hydroxide, that is basic aluminum salts are used. In acidic pH, it may undergo polymerization to form a viscous gel, and that viscous gels will bind with the ulcer crater, more on to the duodenal ulcer. Now, precipitates the protein on surface proteins and it acts as a physical barrier of it. Generally, dietary proteins get deposited on this layer, forming another coat or layer, and how it protects the ulcer for further bathing of acid, and it reduces the chance of bleeding too. It delays gastric emptying and causes gastric PG synthesis, that is, we can consider it as a their protective action. Next one, that is H. pylori. The major drawback with the anti-ulcer therapy, that is infection of Helicobacter pylori. In many incidences, patient or doctor may not be knowing that person is suffering from H. pylori infection, and they used to have other options or other regimens. So for that specific test will be performed, and in the cases of H. pylori infection, antibiotics are prescribed like omeprazole, amoxicillin, clarithromycin, or metronidazole. Here, for the treatment or the eradication of H. pylori infection, triple therapy is used. The best among all the triple therapy regimen is omeprazole, lansoprazole, that is 20 to 30 mg by in a day, clarithromycin, that is for 500 mg by in a day, amoxicillin and metronidazole for 1 gram to 500 mg by in a day. It is given for the 14 days and followed by the proton pump inhibitors for 4 to 6 weeks of therapy, and further short regimen is also available, and for that 7 to 10 days are generally not effective. Here it is the classification of drug from the KD Tripathi 8th edition, where the all drugs are given according to the categories. Suppose first, that is gastric acid secretion inhibitors like H2 antihistamines like cimetidine, ranitidine, famotidine, roxatidine, and lifotidine. Second, that is anticholinergics, that is pyrangyepine, propanthalin, and oxyphenonium. Next, proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole, esomeprazole, pantomeprazole, lansoprazole, rabeprazole, dextra sorry dextrabeprazole, and ilaperazole. Third category into it, that is in gastric acid secretion inhibitors, that is prostaglandin analogs like misoprostol.
Second, that is gastric acid neutralizers or antacids. It could be systemic and the non-systemic, as we already studied. Systemic are sodium bicarbonate and sodium citrate, whereas in the cases of non-systematic, magnesium hydroxide, magnesium trisilicate, aluminum hydroxide, megaltrate, calcium carbonate can be used. Fourth category, that is ulcer protectives. They are sucralfate and the CBS, that is colloidal bismuth substrate. Last category, that is anti-Helicobacter pylori drugs like amoxicillin, clarithromycin, metronidazole, tinidazole, tetracycline, and CBS. So this is all about the treatment options for the peptic ulcer, or we can consider it as a anti-ulcer agents. Thank you.